Welcome to the Instant Sequence on All Your Lights from Scratch tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to cover how to create an instant sequence on all your lights without a visualization file that you created in the visualizer. Starting out in the default CCR mode screen of the SuperStar sequencer, and to do a sequence on all your lights you need to be in visualization mode, and there's two ways to do that. One is to click on the tools menu and select layout, and here you can select either CCR mode or visualization mode, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to go into visualization mode the way you most often would in real usage, and that is by clicking on the file menu and selecting import visualization. In this dialog box you can just accept all the defaults and click on OK, and then it has you select the visualization file you want to import. We're in the default directory, which is visualizations editor, and I'm going to go into the samples directory off of there and open up lightstrings.lee, which will be on all of your computers. That comes down standard with the S3 download. We click on open, and here we see some light strings on a house here, and we can do an instant sequence on that by clicking on tools, instant sequence, and we first have to open an audio file. I'm going to open House on Christmas Street and click on sequence all. It has to first analyze the audio file and create all the triggers, and after it does that it will create the effects for the instant sequence. And we're almost done. There we go. And there's our effects at the top there, and we can play that, and that's the sequence that it came up with very quickly. Now that's really cool, but that's how you do it if you have a visualization file. What if you didn't have a visualization file and you want to just do an instant sequence based on the number of controllers you have? Well, you can do that, and the way you do it is you go into the tools menu and select create quick visualization. Up will pop a very large dialog box, and the default setting for this when you launch yours will just have this one thing checked. For that light strings visualization, I happen to know that it has 48 channels on, and it uses 3 16-channel controllers, and the unit IDs are 1, 2, and 3. Now you can go change these to Cosmic Color Ribbon or DMX Universe. You can change the network and the unit ID, but the defaults here are the way most of us have stuff set up, so all I had to do was put a check mark by the first 3 controllers, and I'm ready to click on create quick viz, and it created this very simple visualization of my controllers. It just created 48 white dots here, and each one of those dots maps to a little square on this one sequencing row, and we can do an instant sequence on that. So we just say sequence all again. It creates an instant sequence and it puts it up there, and that's what it came up with. You notice this time it only has one row because there's just one row on our sequencing grid, and all of the effects are white. That's because we just told it the number of controllers we have, and it has no information on the colors of those channels, so it just assumes they're all white. And if we play this, this is what it looks like. And so it plays that pattern across all these channels, and what you would do in real life is export this, but I'm going to first save the sequence file. That's a good practice to do so that you can give it a name. Right now it's Untitled 14, and I'm going to call it Quick Viz sample.sup, and now I'm going to export that, and when we export this visualization, that creates a file that the Light-O-Rama sequence editor can read. So now we can go launch the Light-O-Rama sequence editor, and when he comes up we can open up that file that we just exported. He comes up with this dialog box that has 3 tabs at the top. I have the existing sequence tab selected, and I have my files sorted by date modified, and so the very top one here is my quickviz sample _ sup.lms file, and so we open that up, and it's there, it's up, and you can see these are all the patterns that it came up with, and there's the 48 channels off the side. The names on it are very long, so you have to expand it here to see the full name that is assigned to all those 48 channels. Now in real life, what you would do is play this sequence to your real lights and you're done. I don't have a set of real lights that I can play this to, but I do have a visualization, and the whole purpose of the visualizer is to let you see what your lights look like. So that's what I'm going to use it for. I happen to have the visualizer already launched here, and I'm going to click on the file menu and say open, and again he's in the default directory of visualizations editor, and I'm going to go into the samples directory that is off of there, and there is that light strings visualization file. I open that, and there you can see that's the same file we were looking at in SuperStar. And in the visualizer, right now we're in the mode that you draw things with. Well, if you want to play a sequence back, you go into simulation mode, and you do that by clicking on this little button here on the left end of the toolbar. We click on that, and you get this blank screen. He's sitting there waiting for channel commands to come from the sequence editor. I'm going to go over here. You just have to trust me. Here's the sequence editor. I got to drag him out of the way so you can see the simulation on the visualizer. I click on the play button of the sequence editor, and there you see the sequence being played in simulation mode. Now that's really cool that it came up with a sequence so quickly like that, and that's what it would look like on your real display. Now one thing you'll notice is that since it had no color information, it's just lighting up everything, whereas if you had created an instant sequence using a visualization, it would be using the color information to light up all the green lights and then all the blue lights in different patterns. And so when you use a quick viz file, it's not going to be an instant sequence that it is as good as a visualization, but it still looks pretty darn cool. So to go out of simulation mode, we're going to click on the stop button here, and now I'm going to do use a quick viz file on a more complex visualization, or on a more complex set of lights, and we go back down into the standard visualizations editor directory, and I have this visualization that Kenneth Smith sent me, and it's a much larger light display, one that we would all love to have. And now we're going to go into SuperStar, and we will import that that same visualization just so you can see it. But that's just so you can see it. We, like I said, the whole purpose of this tutorial is to say, well, what if you don't have, we could create an instant sequence on this, but what if you don't have a visualization of all these lights? Well, you can do it the same way using Create Quick Visualization. And I happen to know that his light display here has controllers from 0, 1 up to 0D. So all I have to do is put check marks up here to 0D and say Create Quick Viz, and it created this quick visualization file of all those controllers. This time there's a lot more white dots, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sequencing rows that are assigned to those. So we can do an instant sequence on that. We say sequence all, and this is an error that is important to know about. It says error, failed to create timings, unable to open audio file house on Christmas Street.wave. And actually I forgot, let me do it again. We got the error, and it says down here, anyway, so it's there, got the error again. It says note, if another program is using the audio file, close the program and then create timings again. Well, the other program that is using the audio file is the sequence editor. Once you play an audio file in the sequence editor, he grabs hold of that file and won't let anybody else use it. So for us to proceed in SuperStar, we have to shut down the sequence editor, and now we say sequence all again. And he's going to go and analyze the audio file, and it has to do this because we have a different number of sequencing rows, and so it has to calculate the trigger points differently. And after it's done analyzing the audio file, it'll create the effects at the top there, and there we are done. So this time it has 5 rows of effects because we have 5 sequencing rows, but again they're all white because it has no color information about the light strings that are hooked to all these channels. So once again we can export this sequence, and I'll call it Quick Viz Sample again. We'll just overwrite that file that's already there, and it just created another file for the sequence editor to use. So we launched the sequence editor again because we had to shut him down, and he'll come up with that dialog box here, and Quick Viz Sample is at the top again. I open him up, and this time it's going to be a bigger file. It takes a while to open, and it's going to have a lot more channels in it. Okay, anytime now. There we go. There are the names, and the way it gets all these names of the channels from the visualization file. That's what he named the fixture that it was in, and so that's where it got the name. But here's all the different patterns that came up for these channels. And again, in real life you would just play this to your real lights, because the whole reason you did this was because you don't have a visualization file. But since I don't have the real lights, I am going to use the visualization file that I have to show what this sequence is going to look like. So once again, we click on this button to go into simulation mode, and this is a floating screen that is on top of SuperStar, but this is the visualizer right here. He's running. It doesn't mean that he's part of SuperStar. I've had some customers think that, and it doesn't. I can minimize SuperStar, and he has nothing to do with this simulation screen that is running. So anyway, let's play the sequence. I just clicked play on the sequence editor, and that's what it came up with. Now that looks cool, but we're not seeing any of the white lights that are in his display. And I purposely did this to show you that many people create their visualizations with a white background, but if you do that, you're not going to see any of your white lights in simulation mode. And the way to fix that is to click on the edit menu and say background properties, and right here is where you set the intensity of the background. I like to set it at 50%, and there now you have a gray background. And when we go into simulation mode and play the sequence, now you see all the white lights. And again, the colors aren't coordinated as well as if you had created this using the visualization file, but there is some coordination with the colors, and that's just because people tend to organize their lights, their channels, somewhat according to the different colors. So to me, it's amazing that it coordinates the lights as well as it does, even though it had no information on the color or location of those lights. So that's how we do it. And so now you can, as I said, you can use SuperStar to quickly create sequences on any light display you have, even without creating a visualization file in the visualizer. And as I said, you could in fact, if you had two CCRs here, you could say I have two cosmic color ribbons, and say create quick viz, and what it did here is these two bottom sequencing rows are CCRs, and it'll still create a sequence for your whole set of lights. And that's all I need to cover on this tutorial. Thank you very much, and have a super day.